Hi, I'm Lily. Today I'm going to read you the story 샬롯's Web, chapter 17 and chapter 18. First, 샬롯's Web, chapter 17, Uncle. When they pulled into the fairgrounds, they could hear music and see the Ferris wheel turning in the sky. They could smell the dust of the racetrack where the sprinkle cart had motioned it, and they could smell hamburgers frying and see balloons aloft. They could hear sheep bleating in their pens. An enormous voice over the loudspeaker said, "Attention, please! Will the owner of a picnic car, license number H2439439, please move your car away from the fireworks shed." "Can I have some money?" asked Fern. "Can I too?" asked Avery. "I'm going to win a doll by spinning a wheel and it will stop at the right number," said Fern. "I'm going to steer a jet plane and make it bump into another one." "Can I have a balloon?" asked Fern. "Can I have a frozen custard and cheeseburger and some raspberry soda pop?" asked Avery. "You shouldn't be quiet till we get the pig unloaded," said Mrs. Terrible. Let's let the children go off by themselves," suggested Mr. Apple. "The fair only comes one year." Mr. Apple gave Fern 2 quarters and two dimes. He gave Avery 5 dimes and 4 nickels. "Now run along," he said, "and remember, the money has to last all day. Don't spend it or the first few minutes. And be back here at the truck at noon so we can all have lunch together. And don't eat a lot of stuff that's going to make you sick to your stomachs. And if you go in those swings," said Mrs. Terrible, "you hang on tight, very tight. You hang on very tight. Hear me? And don't get lost," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "And don't get dirty. Don't get overheated," said their mother. "Watch out for pickpockets, commanded their father. "And don't cross the racetrack when the horses are coming," cried Mrs. Zuckerman. The children grabbed each other by the hand and danced off the direction of the merry-go-round. Here, Fern and Avery going to the fairground. The children grabbed each other by the hand and danced off in the direction of a merry-go-round toward the wonderful music of the wonderful adventure and the wonderful excitement into the wonderful midway, where there would be no parents to guard them and guide them, and where they could be happy and free and do as they pleased. Mrs. Arable stood quietly and watched them go. Then she sighed. Then she blew her nose. "Do you really think it's all right?" she asked. "Well, they've got to grow up sometime," said Mr. Arable, "and the fair is a good place to start, I guess." While Wilbur was being unloaded and taken out of his crate and into his new pig pen, crowds gathered to watch. They started at the sign, "Zuckerman's Famous Pig." Wilbur stirred back and tried to look extra good. He was pleased with his new home. The pig pen was grassy and it was shaded from the sun by a shade roof. Charlotte, watching her chance, scrambled out of the crate and climbed the post to the underside of the roof. Nobody noticed her. Templeton, now wishing to come out in the broad daylight, stayed quietly under the straw at the bottom of the crate. Mr. Zuckerman poured some skim milk into Wilbur's trough. Mrs. Zuckerman and the Arables walked away toward the cattle barn to look at perjured cows and to see the sights. Mr. Zuckerman particularly wanted to look at tractors. Mrs. Zuckerman wanted to see a deep freeze. Lurvy wandered off by himself, hoping to meet his friends and have some fun on the midway. As soon as the people were gone, Charlotte spoke to Wilbur. "It's a good thing you can't see what I see," said Charlotte. "What do you see?" asked Wilbur. "There's a big pig. There's a pig in the next pen, and he's enormous. I'm afraid he's much bigger than you are." Maybe it's older than I am and has had more time to grow, suggested Wilbur. Tears began to come to his eyes. I'll drop down and have a closer look, Charlotte said. Then she crawled along a beam till she was directly over the next pen. She let herself down a drag line until she hung in the air just in front of the big pig's snout. May I have your name? She said politely. The pig stared at her. No name, he said in a big, hearty voice. Just call me Uncle. Very well, Uncle, replied Charlotte. What is the date of your birth? Are you a spring pig? Sure, I'm a spring pig, replied Uncle. What did you think? I was a spring chicken? Ha, that's a good one. Is there? Oh my God, I think Charlotte doesn't like this uncle very much because she said, middling funny, said Charlotte. I've heard funnier ones though. Glad to have met you, and now I must be going. She ascended slowly and returned to Wilbur's pen. He claims he is a spring pig, reported Charlotte, and perhaps he is. One thing is certain, he has a most native personality. He's too familiar, too noisy, and he cracks weak jokes. Also, he's not anywhere near as clean as you are, not as pleasant. I took quite a dislike to him in our brief interview. He's going to be a hard pig to beat, though, Wilbur, on account of his size and weight. But with me helping you, it can be done. When are you going to spin a web? Asked Wilbur. This afternoon, late, if I'm not too tired, said Charlotte. The least thing tires me these days. I don't seem to have the energy I once had. My age, I guess. Wilbur looked at his friend. She looked rather swollen, and she seemed listless. I'm awfully sorry to hear that you're feeling poorly, Charlotte, he said. Perhaps if you spin a web and catch a couple of flies, you will feel better. Perhaps, she said wearily, but I feel like the end of a long day, clipping upside down to the ceiling. She settled down for a nap, leaving Wilbur very much worried. All morning, people wandered past Wilbur's pen. Dozens and dozens of strangers stopped and stared at him, and admired his silky white coat, his curly tail, his kind and radiant expression. Then they would move on to the next pen, where the bigger pig played. Wilbur heard several people make favorable remarks that Uncle's great size. He couldn't help overhearing these remarks, and he couldn't help worrying. And now, with Charlotte not feeling well, he thought, oh dear. One morning, Templeton slept quietly under the straw. The day grew fiercely hot. At noon, the Jokermans and the Arables returned to the pig pen. Then, a few minutes later, Fern and Avery showed up. Fern had a monkey door in her arms and was eating Cracker Jack. Avery had a balloon tied his ear and was chewing a candied apple. The children were hot and dirty. Isn't it hot? Said Mrs. Jokerman. It's terribly hot, said Mrs. Arable, fanning herself. Mrs. Arable, fanning herself with an advertisement of a deep freeze. One by one, they climbed into the truck and opened lunch boxes. The sun beat down on everything. Nobody seemed hungry. When are the judges going to decide about Wilbur? Asked Mrs. Jokerman. Not till today, said Mr. Jokerman. Larry appeared, carrying an Indian blanket that he had won. That's just what we need, said Avery. A blanket. Of course it is, replied Larry, and he spread the blanket across the sideboards of the truck so that it was like a little tent. The children sat in the shade under the blanket and felt better. After lunch, they stretched it out and fell asleep. Now, chapter 18, The Cool of the Evening. In the cool of the evening, when shadows dark ended the fairground, Templeton crept from the crate and looked around. Wilbur lay asleep in the straw. Charlotte was building a web. Templeton's keen nose detected many faint smells in the air. The rat was hungry and thirsty. He decided to go exploring. Without saying anything to anybody, he started out. Bring me back a word, Charlotte called after him. I shall be writing tonight for the last time. Charlotte is sick. I think she can't spin a web. But maybe Charlotte can. The rat mumbled something to himself and disappeared into the shadows. He did not like being treated like a messenger boy. After the heat of the day, the evening came as well. Come relief to all. The Ferris wheel was lighted now. It went round and round in the sky and seemed twice as high as by day. There were lights on the midway, and you could hear the crackle of the gambling machines and the music of the merry-go-round and the voice of the man in a piano booth calling numbers. The children felt refreshed after their nap. Fern met her friend Henry Fussy, and he invited her to ride with him in the Ferris wheel. He even bought a ticket for her, so it didn't cost her anything. When Mrs. Errol happened to look up into the starry sky and saw her little daughter sitting with Henry Fussy and going higher and higher into the air, and so how happy Fern looked. She just shook her head. My, she said, Henry Fussy, think of that. Templeton kept out of sight. In the tall grass behind the cattle barn, he found a folded newspaper. For the newspaper inside it were leftovers from somebody's lunch, a devilled ham sandwich, a piece of Swiss cheese, part of a hard-boiled egg, and the core of a wormy apple. The rat crawled in and ate everything. Then he tore a word out of the paper, folded it up, and started back to Wilbur's pen. Charlotte had her web almost finished when Templeton returned, carrying the newspaper clipping. She had left a space in the middle of the web. At this hour, no people were round the pig pen, so the rat and the spider and the pig were by themselves. I hope you brought a good one, Charlotte said. It is the last word I shall ever write. Here, said Templeton, unrolling the paper. What does it say? Asked Charlotte. You will have to read it for me. It says humble, replied the rat. Humble? Said Charlotte. Humble has two meanings. It means not proud and it means near the ground. That's Wilbur all over. He's not proud and he's near the ground. Well, I hope you are satisfied, sneered the rat. I'm not going to spend all my time fetching and carrying. I came to this fair to enjoy myself, not to deliver papers. You've been very helpful, Charlotte said. Run along if you want to see more of the fair. The rat grinned. I'm going to make a night of it, he said. Your lordship was right. This fair is a rat's paradise. What eating and what drinking, and everywhere good tidings and good hunting. Bye-bye, my humble Wilbur. Fare thee well, Charlotte, you old scarecrow. This will be the night to remember in a rat's life. He vanished into the shadows. Charlotte went back to work. It was quite dark now. In the distance, fireworks began going off. Rockets scattering fiery bursts in the sky. By the time the Arabs and the Germans and the Lurby returned from the grandstand, Charlotte had finished her web. The word humble has woven neatly in the center. Nobody noticed in the darkness. Everyone was tired and happy. Fern and Avery climbed into the truck and lay down. They pulled the Indian blanket over them. Lurby gave Wilbur a forkful fresh of straw. Mr. Erble patted him. Time for us to go home, he said to the pig. see you tomorrow." The grown-ups climbed slowly in the truck, and Wilbur heard the engine started, and they heard the truck moving away in a low speed. He would felt lonely and homesick had Charlotte not been with him. He never felt lonely when she was near. In the distance, he could still hear the music of merry-go-round. As he was dropping off to sleep, he spoke to Charlotte. "Sing me that song again about the dawn and the dark," he begged. "Not today," she said in a low voice. "I'm too tired." Her voice didn't seem to come from her web. "Where are you?" asked Wilbur. "I can't see you. Are you on your web?" "I'm back here," she answered, "up in this back corner." "Why aren't you on your web?" asked Wilbur. "You almost never leave the web." "I left it tonight," she said. Wilbur closed his eyes. "Charlotte," he said after a while, "do you really think Jacqueline will let me leave and not kill me when the cold weather comes? Do you really think so?" "Of course," said Charlotte. "You're a famous pig, and you're a good pig. Tomorrow you will probably win a prize. The whole world will hear about you. Jacqueline will be proud and happy. To own such a pig, to have nothing to fear. You have nothing to fear, Wilbur, nothing to worry about. Maybe you will live forever. Who knows? And now go to sleep." For a while there was no sound. Then Wilbur's voice. "What are you doing up there, Charlotte?" "Oh, making something," she said. "Making something, as usual." "Is it something for me?" asked Wilbur. "No," said Charlotte. "It's something for me, for a change." "Please tell me what it is," begged Wilbur. "I will tell you in the morning," she said. "When the first light comes into the sky, and sparrows still, and the cows rattle their chains, when the rooster crows, and the stars fade, when all the cars whisper along the highway, you look up here, and I will show you something. I will show you my masterpiece." Before she finished the sentence, Wilbur was asleep. She could tell by the sound of his breathing that he was sleeping peacefully deep in the straw. Miles away, at the Arable's house, the men sat around the kitchen table, eating a dish of pan peaches and talking over the events of the day. Upstairs, Avery was already in bed and asleep. Mrs. Arable was tucking Fern into the bed. "Did you have a good time at the fair?" she asked as she kissed her daughter. Fern nodded. "I had the best time I have ever had anything or any time in or my whole life." "Well," said Mrs. Arable, "isn't that nice? What is Charlotte made, I wonder?" Tomorrow I'm going to read chapter 19. Bye!